One.
Okay.
Okay, so this is very exciting. Welcome to episode one of our new podcast, Toxic. And I'm your host, Shalina, and my co-host is
Leia.
Yay. Okay, so we got through that part. We at least know how to
Yeah.
introduce ourselves and say our names. So, Leia, what exactly is toxic? What are we here doing?
Well, as we are both media, lifelong media watchers, but now media experts as adult women, we notice that we have a certain perspective about and the ability to read through the lines, to read the stuff that's not there, and that we had some similar takes on things. So with Toxic, we are bringing our media expert uh, training and our instincts, like working in propaganda, to sort of take apart topics that, to take apart pop culture events that can teach us something about like where we are today as a society, the things that we hold dear, the things that we hold in high esteem, the things we kind of worship, where our fascinations lie.
Yes. Okay. I totally agree with that. I think it's an excuse for us to do what we love. Like, we are both media junkies. And though we find pop culture kind of degenerate and toxic, thus the name, we can't look away. It's like watching a very entertaining car crash. I think both of us kind of don't like celebrity culture, but are somehow fascinated by it. Um, and
Yeah,
I think there's lots of lessons to learn to examine the topics du jour, if you will. Oh,
there you have.
and as a bonus, we um we both are very much into just all media of all kinds. And as a little side project, we like making funny covers for people who are making the news of the day. So they get to be featured in our magazine, which is also named Toxic. And let's let's just tell everybody. Leia, you are like a noted copywriter. I think you're kind of one of the best in the business. So it's a great combo for you to kind of take the things we're seeing in the
Yeah.
media that people really aren't covering and like, okay, this is the real story behind these people, or this is what's really going on, or this is our take on what's happening.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I've been writing headlines for a long time. It's a joy, and I think we're both really good at, I want to say reducing things, but yeah, kind of getting to the point of things. And I'm pointing out interesting angles, and we have a lot of fun. We try to keep it to a light, a minimum snark, not nothing too mean. Yeah, more like to make you think.
Right. I'm glad you brought up the mean aspect because I do think it's kind of low vibe to talk about people and to dissect them and to pick them apart. Like it actually sometimes feels kind of gross. And it's not nothing that we would want to do in our everyday life. But the purpose isn't to pick celebrities apart or to hate on them. The purpose is to thoroughly examine this culture where we hold upon high these people who are really fallible human beings and who are also, unfortunately, promoting a lot of things that probably shouldn't be promoted. You know, they're exemplifying
Mm,
characteristics in our society that we should be kind of healing and fixing, not
absolutely.
glorifying. Like, and so that's kind of our issue. Is like we can't look away. We love it too. We're steeped in celebrity culture. We watch things, we read things, we listen to things, but since we're media experts and also since we're adults, like we can see the degeneracy of it or we can see the issues of it. But like children and teenagers whose brains are still forming, like they really can't. Like they think it's a good idea to like behave this way or they glorify it or they want to aspire to it. And it's just like, someone in our own little small way are like fighting back against that tide of like glorifying people who shouldn't be glorified.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we're not trying to pick on people. We're trying to pick on society and ourselves. That's really what we're doing.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so what's going on this week? So this is week ending it's the middle of December. What's in the news this week?
It's the
What's
middle of
going on?
December. It's technically the week before Christmas, right? we're not treating it that way because it's ending at a on a weird. I don't know why, but I haven't heard anyone say that yet. But basically, Christmas is a week away.
Oh yeah. Well, winter
So
solstice is next week, and that's my preferred holiday.
sure, absolutely. Yes, good point. There are other holidays out there. Certainly not the only one, but just to say like that is that's where we are in the week or in the year. And so, there's always end of year things that are happening at the end of the year, obviously. But the top stories, I guess, there were a few this week. This week was very sad. We learned the news about Stephen Twitch boss, unfortunately taking his own life, which is very, very sad and hard for everyone. Kind of makes everyone look around and think about how they feel about their life right now, which I guess is good that we all stop and take stock and can be
Okay,
sad together.
so for listeners
Yeah.
who don't know who he is, because I did not know who he was, I had no idea who this man is.
Yeah.
Who is he?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to explain who he was.
Oh,
He was he was known for being a dancer. In the public eye. And I say it that way because he'd been on a couple different shows, but most people knew him from So You Think You Can Dance, a show I used to watch a lot. And then he became from and other shows, but he eventually became a figure, a pretty stable figure on Ellen DeGeneres' talk show Ellen that just ended just technically a few weeks ago, or maybe a few months ago. And that is where the majority of America knows him from. And since then, since that show wrapped after many, many, many years, he had sort of taken on a second life on TikTok and on social media in general, like putting up dances with his wife, who he met at So You Think You Can Dance. So
oh,
all
cute.
that to say, yeah, very cute. All that to say that he was a figure in a lot of people's lives in a show that people know, are it's known for making people happy, that people tune in for happy things. So they associate him with a lot of joy and happiness and silliness. He and Ellen had a lot of very silly routines together, and she's a really good sport about making fun of herself in that way. So it was very sad for people. And very confusingly, he posted videos dancing like it was almost like 24 hours before he took his life, dancing. I think he just celebrated his 9th anniversary with his wife. They seem very happy, 3 really sweet looking children. And so it's a real shock all around, but especially because seemingly, to the public, there were no warning signs. He had, his most recent post had been about the disparity, between policing in America when it comes to people of color. And it was obviously something that bothered him. And so, but nothing that you would think you would sort of take your life over. It was very shocking for people. So, but you never know what people are going through. And it's, not to, well, yes, to be like another person saying this, like, that's why you should be kind as much as you can to people that are struggling out there that, really unfortunate. But that is the biggest thing that happened this week. Also this week, plenty of other things. I think the most notable is that the royal family, the Meghan and Harry special dropped. It was last week, right?
I think the week before, maybe, or last week, they dropped the first 3 episodes, and
Yeah,
then
last week
yesterday
was the first.
they
Yep.
dropped the last 3. And so,
Yes, and that
yes,
has been causing,
a
a
ruckus.
ripple of. Indeed, yeah, a lot, a lot. So you are our resident royal expert. Like,
Oh
what is your
no,
take
am
on
I?
these things? I think
Oh,
so. You. By the way, Charlene knows a lot about the royals and understands a lot about the structure and power structure and the history of royalty in general, European. I would say probably specifically.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that's kind of embarrassing, but yes,
Well, no, but they're not
you
just
are
because, and
correct.
not because I'm not calling you a royalist. Just so you know, it's not a sneaky way of saying she's a royalist.
I am not a
Um,
royalist.
but the idea of studying power is very interesting, and yeah, I feel like I study power, just not in the same way. I like generals and strategy and who did what in that way, but like, yeah, I haven't been as interested in the royal stuff, but it is interesting when you start to, I just a quick but related segue, like, if you've never wandered down the structure of how to address different members of the royal family, it's fascinating. Like you can be a, what is it? You can be a queen consort.
Yes.
Which is different than a queen, right? That means you'll never rule. You're the partner of. You can
That's
be,
right.
or the way that Princess Queen Elizabeth, who just passed away, that her husband was not automatically a king. He was known as Prince Philip. His status did not get bumped up with her becoming queen. So it's actually really fascinating if you ever get into it. So anyway.
No, he did not become king. In fact, he was a prince in his own right, but he had to give up his titles so he could marry her.
That's crazy. Wait, so he was a prince?
Yes, he was the prince of Greece and Denmark.
Okay.
Yep.
No, and then had to give those up. Now, why is it? Why can't he just be the prince of those things and then also married to, right? Those countries are not, even though all the royalties secretly all related. Wink, wink.
Right,
they're
it's
not
one family.
outwardly. Yeah, they're not outwardly related. So, do you know why, or is that?
I don't know. I think part of it was, I wonder if they had kept that kingdom. If basically his uncle had pretty much lost the kingdom and they were exiled for one.
Okay.
And I also don't know if it's because to be married into that family, you have to have the same religion. You do have to have the same religion. They need to be God,
what
Protestants.
Are they Protestant?
Yeah, but it's specific. It's the Church of England. And also because I think you can't have competing priorities or,
loyalties to.
Thank you, loyalties.
That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And
wow,
I mean, think about it. Like, let's say everything went crazy. Oh gosh, we're off on a tangent, but okay.
Yeah.
Revisionist history. Let's say his uncle fled the way his uncle did, but then something else happened and they were able to, because sometimes people can recover their crowns and their kingdoms, but the uncle is out and it's like, sorry, the uncle was a dud. It's going to move over to the other side of the family, which would be his father. And so then let's say his father then inherited the crown as the next in line. Well, now what's going to happen? He's going to be married to the Queen of England, but he's now in line to inherit the kingdom of Greece. You know what I mean? Like, so, or am I over here? Like, it's just gets to be complicated, I guess. So I don't know.
Well, they don't go into any of that, thankfully, in this sort of tell-all explosive documentary style movie. Is it called Meghan and Harry? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think it's called Meghan and Harry.
Okay,
I believe so.
But so two things. One, if you just personally ever want to wander down that, let yourself have 40 minutes and wander into Wikipedia. The King's Speech is also kind of an interesting one. I don't know. I think they talk a little bit about the structure of what you call different members, but yes, this specific documentary is about the dynamics of the the youngest son of now King Charles and the late Princess Diana and Harry and his wife, and we all sort of know, unless you live on Mars, that he and his wife left the British royal family. What is it, like 2 or 3 years ago now?
Mm-hmm. Right before the pandemic.
That it came with a lot of controversy, and they have since had a sit down not tell all, because they're not tell all. They were actually quite discreet with Oprah. And everything they said was explosive. And it seemed that the royal family, which I believe they call the firm on the inside, right?
Yeah,
something
the
like
firm.
That they
he calls it the institution during the documentary, but yes, they apparently usually call it the firm.
That they had a lot of objections to the things that Harry said, though it seemed like he seemingly was telling the truth, and seemed to go on a bit of a media blitz afterward, and now seemed to kind of be pimping out the future King William, both Prince William still, and his wife, and now they seem to sort of be being pitted against his younger brother in an adversarial way right now. So I have not watched it yet. I've been reading a lot of think pieces on it. So what can you tell us? Or
Oh,
what's
it's a
the
whole.
takeaway? What's the thing that you learned about, or what is the toxic angle?
Okay, I'm gonna get straight to the point with this. This is, oh God. The real issue here is, and I hate that everything now is racialized. I hate it as much as anybody else. I know white people are really sick of it. But best believe folks need to know black folks are as well. We can't help but that everything's about race. But many, many, many white folk have their panties in a bunch over Meghan Markle and have for the past couple years and are all just have this whole
Narrative
they don't
around
even
her.
yes, they have this whole narrative around her and the media is also being played very cleverly. Actually, they're part of it. They're not being played. They're
They're
part of
part of,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
But anyway, I'm just cutting straight to the straight. This is an example of white supremacy. Now, many white people will not be
Oh,
able to see it. They will never ever be able to see it, and that's part of the problem. But this is the real issue. The monarchy, the British monarchy, is not the richest monarchy. It may not even, no, I would still say it's the most powerful monarchy. It's definitely the most well-known monarchy, right?
yeah.
It covers the most territory.
The sun does not set on the British Empire.
That's right.
At
Remember,
least it once did not.
honestly, I think it still does not, barely, but they still got most of, not most of it, but they still have a lot of their empire. So the point is, they are the very pinnacle. They literally, even if they don't want to be the face of white supremacy, even if they're not white supremacists, even if they're not racist, I'm saying that's a big if, right? Because it's just the water
Yeah.
that we swim in. But even if that's not what they want to stand for, that is what they stand for. They literally are. They are the British monarchy. They are the second Rome. They conquered the world. They are the ones who were so instrumental in the slave trade. They are part of why America is who we are today and why we're an imperialistic military empire. You know, I mean, they are the pinnacle. They are literally white supremacy. These are people who either still today believe or come from people who believe in the divine right to rule. That if the crown is on your head and if the aristocracy is in your family's hands, and that is because God appointed you because you are superior. You are the
Wow.
leaders of this realm. It's literally, I mean, what else? There's nothing more white supremacist than that. Whether they want to be that or not, that's who they are. Now, this little black girl, I would call her brown, but maybe I'm being terrible, comes up in there, charms one of their faves, marries a prince and bounces. Why? Because they were terrible to her. And because when it was all said and done, this black woman decided that she didn't need them. She didn't want to be involved with them. It wasn't enough. They weren't enough. She was above it. She was beyond it. And she was better in every way. And they literally cannot take it. These sad white women, not all of them, that sounded unfair, but the sad ones, these like keyboard warriors who are like, oh,
Sure.
always complaining about her, they're mad because she has everything they've ever dreamed of wanting and she turned her nose up at it because that country and that press treated her terribly. And this is not 1952 or 1852 or even 1972, and she's not taking it and she's not having it, and she doesn't have to be happy to take their abuse. That's what white supremacy tells you. White supremacy says, we let you in the room. What is the problem? We're racist, yes. We're terrible, yes. But you're here. That, I mean, that's
so,
yeah.
Okay, wait, let's talk about that. So was there no room for that then? Like, honestly, you know, at the end of the day, she didn't know where she was marrying into. Like, should she be surprised? Does she really have room for that? Shouldn't she, as they, very famously say, just like shut up and think of England? It should.
That literally is their job, right? You're a princess of the realm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a fair question. I think she is brilliant as she is, was a little bit delusional, and I think she's never been treated like a black woman before. Not really.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, she wasn't expecting all that. And also, they're just an abusive institution anyway, right? Even if she was not black, she is still married to despair, and that is the job, to be the fall guy.
You know, it's funny that that's what I hear from all of not my British family, mind you, but because they are, Caribbean immigrants, just like my immediate family is. But any of my British friends, so wink, wink, of a different hue, they kind of justify that and say like, well, no, our press is always this. I'm sorry, specifically speaking of like some of the press that Meghan got in the beginning, it seemed quite slanted and very pointedly racist and anti-American. They would say that, no, we treat everyone this poorly, like, and they would point to headlines about Kate that weren't necessarily flattering. In my opinion, it didn't speak to just how much more pointed Meghan's headlines were. How everything that Kate did, if Meghan did the same thing, the outcome would be completely different. And they actually could compare times where anytime they talked about Kate being pregnant and touching her stomach, that was, loving and protective. But if Meghan did it, it was like obsessive and gross.
Right. Yeah, there was a complete double standard. And I think there's something to that, is like, yes, the press is abusive, and it's going to, like, that's part of their job, is to abuse the royal family. And I mean, I say that tongue in cheek. It really is not their job, but they think it is their job. I don't think anybody's job should be to abuse others. But anyway, they think that's their job. But the difference is, like, okay, yes, they were abusive to Kate, but they're being abusive to Meghan in a very specific way. So it's like they're using the race angle because
that's available.
That's it, exactly, because it's available, right? The other thing is, with Kate, it was eventually going to shift, and it did. But with Meghan, it was never going to. One, because that's kind of the job, is to be, the fall guy.
Right, the fall guy.
And two,
married to the fall guy.
Yeah, like Kate is gonna one day be the queen, and then she's going to be protected. She's gonna be at the top of the hierarchy.
Right.
And they weren't gonna protect her. And honestly, it just wasn't worth it. And that's really what they're all so mad about. Back to, like, my original point, is like, she doesn't need it. And she doesn't need them in that way. Some people would be happy to be abused and wear a tiara and a sparkly dress and to live off the dole and be in a gilded cage. Some people would really enjoy being in a gilded. Yes. She doesn't want to shut up and think of England. She has ideals. She has thoughts. She's a fully formed human being. She has resources of her own. Yeah. And it was becoming a little bit scary and dangerous as well. And after Princess Diana, this isn't just like a theoretical, like, oh, I'm scared. Like, I know people have died.
At least for her husband, he's seen it before. That would be pretty panicky.
Exactly. And also, who wants to be in a family where you can't, okay, so I do admit I have an issue with just loving historical fiction. And so I watch a lot of historical fiction over the years. And, like, this is the job of these families. These are tough families. It's not as bad as it is today because we live in different times, but your brother could chop your head off, and may have, you know what I mean? Like, these families literally fought each other sometimes over positions, over privilege, over power. And the same thing is happening today with them. The palace did not protect them. They made a decision not to. It was a strategic decision. It was purposeful. They had to, like, they say, like, you gotta, I don't want to say cut weight, but, like, you have to protect the insular. You have to protect the crown. The crown is most important. I can love you, Harry. I can support you. But if you're at all a threat to the crown or overshadowing the crown, then you've got to go and take your little black wife with you.
Okay. So I mean, I don't mean to be horrible, but they have a literal child molester in the family, in the immediate family. Was still there? Like, what's going on there? Like, why is this something to take a person apart about, but not like actual crimes against?
Okay, I'm so glad you brought that up, because unfortunately that was part of the issue. Now, because they are so classy, they never said that, but they did talk about how part of what happens is you trade stories. And so all of the principal royals have their own press office, their own courtiers working for them, but sometimes they're working against each other. So let's say you and I are besties, which we are, or let's say we're sisters and we're part of this family. And I have my press secretary and you have your press secretary. And unfortunately, I fell into a scandal. Okay, something scandalous happened in my family or with me, and I'm all splashed all over the front pages for weeks. And I need myself off the front pages. So guess what I'm going to have to do, unfortunately? I'm going to have to horse steal. And I'm going to have to tell my press secretary to tell someone in the press about some, like, minor scandal you have going on that no one knows. Yes,
Really?
to get. I'm sorry, because
Damn.
they need another royal, and you are cute and you're attractive, and people are into you and they're interested in you, and you're part of this family. And I need my scandal off the front page, so I'm gonna have to serve you up. Sorry,
That is rough. That's
that is
cold-hearted
rough,
of you.
isn't it? And that's what happened, and that's what they're doing. That's what they
I
did.
see. Wow. So what's next? Well, and I mean that in both ways. So this wasn't the end. Are there more episodes? Like, it seems to get more and more
No, I
explosive.
think this is it. And the other thing is what's next is they need to leave them alone. Honestly, that's what they need to do. Because they weren't ready for this. The royal
Mm,
family, they're used to running roughshod over anybody and everybody. They're used to closing ranks. They're used to hierarchical structure. They are the Brits and they are the royal family. And they are the people at the top call the shots and the other people fall in line. This is not that this is they need to understand who they're dealing with. This is Harry and Meghan. They are not playing that game and
mm,
to leave them alone because they weren't expecting the Netflix. They weren't expecting the Oprah. And
mm.
when they took their security away and when they started kind of playing hardball with them, they expected them to crawl back into the fold and to
That
fall in
sounds so.
line.
Aha, they were supposed to capitulate. Okay.
Because most
Okay.
all of them do.
Right. That's what you would do. You want the
Yeah.
protection.
hmm
Now, I just think it's so interesting that everyone is, by the way, in my opinion, still being quite polite, because I know if someone came swinging after me and effectively lying, um, the first place I'm going to go is to point to the dirty uncle in the corner.
Right. And you see how they never have.
Yes, I would. Yes, I do see that. But I'm just saying, like, I would be. You're going to leave me alone,
Exactly. And I think
or
they
it's
need to
going to
understand
hurt.
that.
Yeah.
Right? I think they're finally getting that a little bit, but they're not
Uh,
really leaving them alone because they're doing a hard press in the media in America. And I
yeah.
wondered why. It was really bothering me because I noticed how the tenor of the way they cover Harry and Meghan over the past 6 months has really changed in America. Like it's always been their enemy number one in in the UK, but American press was pretty doing a pretty good job of being neutral or being kind of pro Harry and Meghan, but it totally has shifted. And I'm like, what's going on? Well, what's going on? Because as you know, that's part of our whole shtick here is that we're both media experts, by trade, by training, by interest, is that they are doing a hard press. The British,
By divine right of kings.
yeah, or their press offices are doing a hard press in America. And so for
Mm.
some reason they also want to capture our love for them. They want Americans to also side with the Brits.
What?
And of
Wait a
course,
minute. We had a
yes,
whole
they
tea party
do.
and a war about this. Like,
This is
oh,
exactly that's why
it's
I've been so
over.
disgusted by it. I've been so
That's not
disgusted by
right.
it. But
Well, that's a
they've been
shame.
winning. They've been winning the media war. Meghan and Harry really these past 6 months, like I said, the media here has really given them a hard time as well. It's been really shameful to watch. I do think they will continue to have a hard road to toe. It's going to be a little rough for them, but in the end, they're going to prevail because one, they've got the truth on their side. Um, and I think William and Kate in that crown, unfortunately, is going to come out bedraggled and beat up, especially if they don't just leave those two alone. They need to take the L. They really do. They need to take the L. They need to go ahead and try to save face over in the UK
Sure.
and get the love of those people, but they need to leave Meghan and Harry alone.
It's such an easy L to take, too. All that's being asked is don't say mean stuff about us, right? Like, from my understanding, they're not really asking for anything other than to be left to fend for themselves.
Exactly.
So it's strange that that is a request that isn't to being honored, or has to be, that I see the headlines, in the British media are brutal.
Yeah, they
I
want
saw
to
one to,
destroy
in
them.
preparing for this, that they consider them traitor, or Piers Morgan considers Harry a traitor to his country. Can you imagine? For choosing the wife that Piers Morgan wanted to abuse. He's a traitor to his country.
Oh, and let's
So
not forget, Piers Morgan has repeatedly admitted that he very much was infatuated with Meghan and was sad that she didn't give him a second date. So, yikes.
and I have to say, it must be said that that's always made me give Megan a side eye, because how do you get the first date?
Okay, remember. So so
Like,
I am a kind of I don't want to call myself a fangirl of hers because I'm a fangirl of no one, but I do like her, and I think she is quite interesting. But be for real. Like, she's a mastermind and a bit of a social climber. And so when she took herself over to the UK, she was trying to kind of work it. I mean, she wasn't trying to date him necessarily, but she's trying to meet media heads and
She's
honchos.
taking meetings with whoever.
Exactly. She's taking meetings.
And he considered it a date.
Mm-hmm.
How gross. How embarrassing. And so
Yeah.
he just keeps pronouncing this on national British television.
As if he cannot
And she's
see
just
himself.
too polite and classy to not. Yeah, is it right? Like, because if he's whispering it to his closest friends.
But he's not
and I get
whispering
it.
it. He's like shouting it. Like, he even, what's crazy is he will even say, like, I mean, admittedly, like, I really liked her and I was really sad when she didn't return my phone calls, and it was just, and it just gushing about her. And then in the next sentence, talking about how much she's terrible, she hates her, she's a social climber, she's destroyed everything, she's a disgrace.
Well,
it's just like, wow.
Note, are there men like this that are that naive that really think that it's their winning personality and $10 smile that has people accepting dates with them? Like, has he been told that he's got a great personality? Like, I'm so very curious. Like, how he told himself that this girl would like him or this woman. It's astounding to me. But what do they say? The price of audacity is.
Oh, well, isn't Black women always wanting to cultivate the confidence of mediocre white men? Like, isn't that our whole thing? So,
well,
but remember, the world tells men that
him.
if they have enough money and power and influence, they can have anything they want. And then when they get that money, power, influence, and they don't get things they want, then they get very angry sometimes. So,
well, that sounds really hard. That sounds almost as bad as being discriminated against. So, look at that. Hearts and minds changing all over. Isn't that amazing? Well, thank you for the rundown. That is pretty interesting. I guess I have to catch up. I wasn't going to watch, but I suppose it's my duty.
I think everybody should watch it, even if you hate her, especially if you love her and them. I think it's really interesting that she married a warrior. She really did.
As it turns out, the little ginger
Mm-hmm.
is the bravest fighter of them all. He's got his mother's spirit.
Yeah, he does.
Well, so what's the verdict? Who is the most toxic figure in this situation? Who is our donkey of the day?
Ooh, I don't know if it's the media or if it's the monarchy. Honestly, I'm so sorry. May she rest in peace. Actually, no, I don't care if she rests in peace. I know that sounds terrible, but I don't care. It's
I hope
Queen
you mean the
Elizabeth
queen and
II.
not. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Because like someone commented, they were like, screw her. I know she was old and this and that, but when it came down to it, she chose her nasty pedo son over them. Because it was fine. You know what I mean? Like, having them be smirched in the press meant less flack for him.
Ooh.
And it stops at the top. Like, and it's one of those things. Of course, Granny didn't ask them to do that. Of course, Granny didn't necessarily approve, for them to be slammed in the media and for them to trade stories about them. But Granny didn't stop it. And at the end of the day, she could have at any moment if she really wanted to, because she still was wearing the crown. So she's the toxic one, and her as the symbol of the monarchy is.
Ooh, well, you heard it here first, folks. Well, or anyone else with sense. So Queen Elizabeth, bad for business.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah. I think that is what we have to say this week.